in that particular event. And that's kind of what we see here when it comes to the flood. All right. So we're going to start off with the Dictionary of Old Testament Pentateuch, a compendium of contemporary biblical scholarship. And it says, and it talks about these various reports, if you will, of this cataclysmic event. And it says here that there are three major documents from Mesopotamia that offer an account of the flood. The earliest, a Sumerian fragment about 70 lines, was found at Nippur and is generally dated to the 17th century. It was combined by Jacobson with two other fragments into a hypothetical composition he entitled the Eridu Genesis. Right? This is from John H. Walton, Flood, from the Dictionary of the Old Testament. Right? That's his entry in that particular book. A roughly contemporary account in Akkadian, the Atrahasis epic, contains an account of the creation of humankind as well as the flood. All right, so this is a second iteration, right? Well, not so much iteration, but a second reporting of this event that we find in the ancient Near East. The third account of the flood is found in Tablet 11 of the Gilgamesh epic. You know, a lot of us have heard this. In fact, this is the one that most people will use to accuse the Bible that the Bible's biting off of this source material. Okay. Now, what's interesting when it comes to these flood narratives, neither Egypt nor Syria preserved independent flood traditions, which I find very interesting because it's the people who are very pro-Kemet who will say that we ripped this stuff from them, but you don't have an independent flood tradition. So that's quite interesting to me. So when the Genesis account is set alongside the fullest Mesopotamian account of the flood, that found in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Tablet 11, the stories are seen to have a great deal in common. The other Near Eastern accounts of the flood are too fragmentary for a full-scale comparison, but where there are points in common, they are noted too. This is from The Coherence of the Flood Narrative by Gordon J. Wyndham. So let's look at these similarities, and there's quite a few, right? There's the divine decision to destroy mankind, warning to flood hero, command to build ark, the hero's obedience, command to enter, the entry, closing door, description of flood, destruction of life, end of rain, etc. Ark grounding on mountain, hero opens window, birds reconnaissance, exit, sacrifice, divine smelling of sacrifice, blessing on flood hero. Right? When you look at these major different reportings of the events, what are we talking about? Atrahas, we're talking about the Eridu Genesis, what are we talking about? The Epic of Gilgamesh, and the Hebrew account of the flood. You're going to find these commonalities, right? But the issue isn't the commonalities, right? It's where does the Bible differ? And that's where it becomes very powerful, right? What are the differences? So we're going to look at the differences now, right? So we're going to look at the reason for the flood. These stories have different reasons for the flood. All right. Before I do that, let me look at the chat real quick. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We got my man CMB in the building. Yes, yes. This is great. This is great. Like, share, and subscribe. My man Jose Rivera is in the building. Yes, yes. So let's go. So, reason for the flood. Among the ancient Near Eastern accounts, only Atrahasis offers an explanation for why the gods sent the flood. There, the complaint of Enlil concerns the noise and uproar of humanity, along with the explanation that the land was billowing like a bull. The result of this tumult is that Enlil is deprived of sleep. The nature of this noise has been the subject of much discussion. Some of the options are as follows, right? The commotion of violence, or the screams and cries of victims, the clamor of petitions for justice, the turmoil of rebellion against the gods, and the cacophony resulting from overpopulation. Any and all these could conceivably give definition to the quote-unquote noise and or uproar. Since the two are fairly general terms, even the bellowing like a bull description retains a certain ambiguity. So in these texts, the reason for the flood is humanity is just too noisy. You're bothering me. You're annoying. You know, it's kind of like what's that what's that cartoon? Oh, I forgot the name of the cartoon. He's like, Dada, daddy, 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 daddy. He's, you know, the kid's annoying, like, daddy, dad. Basically, that's how the guy was perceiving humanity at the time, Enlil. Right? It was they were being a pest. Humanity was annoying him. Now, why they were annoying him, we're not quite sure based on the linguistics, but we do know there was some kind of noise or uproar. And the guy was like, I'm tired of these guys. Let's kill them. Right? That's the reason for the flood in these other stories. Right? Let's look at the role and status of deity. The gods are first resolute when the decree is made, then terrified when the storm is raging. Right? But their gods got terrified. Okay. Then bitter and full of regret at the result. And finally, indignant at Enlil, who was blamed as the responsible party and made a scapegoat for the debacle. Enlil is portrayed as a short-sighted bully who is easily outwitted. Right? Sounds a lot like Yahweh, right? No, I don't think so. He blusters so predictably that he is an easy target for the cagey Enki. The latter is so shrewd and glib that he can talk circles around Enlil, turning what begins as his own trial for circumventing the oath of silence into a challenging denunciation against Enlil for incompetence in one of his principal areas of responsibility. So basically what we're having is this celestial episode of Love and Hip Hop going on in the heavens, right? In this situation, right? There's drama. There's drinks being tossed in other gods' faces, right? They're petty, they're messy, they're conniving, right? Does this sound like the biblical account of the flood to you? I don't think so. Despite Ea's or Enki's role as the champion of humanity who engineers the preservation of civilization, none of the gods come out of this episode looking particularly attractive. Their limitations are debilitating and their character flaws evident. They are driven by selfish motives and have little concern for people. These qualities are no different from those that characterize the gods generally in the ancient Near East and offer a consistent contrast to the depiction of the God of the Bible. Right? So we see, again, right, very temperamental, messy, you know, love and hip hop type, you know, reality show pantheon of deities who act very much like their human counterparts, right? So when people say, well, your God is man-made, well, that accusation sticks really well with these other deities because they do act like humans, right? Betray each other. They belittle each other, make fun of each other, you know, set each other up. You know, you got one guy trying to line up the other guy. You know, you got one guy trying to beat the other guy in the head. It's like, that's not what you find in scripture. So when people make these accusations of plagiarizing, it's like, you're not really looking at what's going on here. All right? Yahweh's absolute autonomy and consistently elevated character leave little room for the critical assessment that his actions are mindless or rash. The Genesis account abounds in justice, in sovereignty, and perhaps a bit surprisingly, in grace. The picture of God offered in the Genesis narrative of the flood shows him to be distressed over injustice and violence. Right? He's not upset because of noise. He's upset at the character of the humans he's created. Right? Big difference. He's not annoyed, he's distressed. And even while he is responding to this situation with dramatic punitive action, his grace and mercy are evident, right? And I've done a message on Noah's Ark, and you know, it when you look at, especially when you look at the cultural context and the wording that's used, it's even more clear that this is the case, that God is being gracious. Because you got to remember, in the beginning of the flood narrative, what state is humanity in? Right? They are wilding out. Right? They're in a state of devolving creation. So it's not that God's just fed up and I'm going to get rid of you. God basically gives humanity what they want because they were already eating